Today let's talk about hair growth supplements for women. I am ranking the supplements and ingredients with the best evidence, the worst evidence, and the red flags you need to watch out for. And if this is your first time here, I've been investigating the research on dietary supplements for over 30 years. I am independent. I don't have an axe to grind. If a supplement works, I will tell you. If a supplement doesn't work, I'll tell you that too. Okay, get comfortable and let's roll. And let's begin by discussing the research on what is arguably the best known hair growth supplement out there today. Yeah, that's right. We're talking Nutrafol. Nutrafol is actually one of the few hair growth supplements for women that have human clinical trials behind it. Some of the Nutrafol research is not perfect. In my opinion, some studies are better than others. Here, for example, is one of the weaker Nutrafol studies. It was published in 2026. I liked that it lasted 6 months and that the researchers reported improvements in hair strength and hair length, but I also had several concerns. First, there was no placebo group. Second, this is not a randomized clinical trial. And third, there are no accompanying before and after pictures, and I think that last point is worth mentioning again because other Nutrafol studies lasted 6 months and they did include before and after pictures. Now, before we move on from Nutrafol, there is one ingredient in this supplement that I think deserves a closer look, and that ingredient is called palmetto. Palmetto has a reputation in the hair health world because it is thought to inactivate an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone into a more potent form called dihydrotestosterone, or DHT. DHT is implicated in hair loss. And because palmetto appears to block this conversion of testosterone into DHT, that gives it a reasonable theory, although I would say I believe the proof for palmetto is a bit lacking, especially in women. Regardless, this is the reason why I see palmetto in so many hair growth supplements. If you're evaluating a hair growth supplement and you see palmetto among the ingredients, understand that a lot of the clinical trials involving hair growth use between 100 and 320 milligrams of palmetto daily. Next up is another very popular hair growth supplement called Viviscal. When it comes to Viviscal, the key standout ingredients in this supplement are what the company calls their amino complex. The amino complex is essentially composed of type 2 collagen derived from sharks and oyster extract powder. Viviscal also has several clinical trials. I identified 4 human studies, of which 2 of them involved only women. Let's look at them now. This paper, which was published in 2012, involved 15 women with self-perceived thinning hair. The authors reported that the average number of terminal hairs, those are the thicker hairs on the head, increased in the Viviscal group from 271 at the start of the study to 609 after 6 months, and that was significantly better than those who took a placebo. Here are 2 people involved in this clinical trial. The first pictures you see are what they looked like at the start of the study, then 90 days later, and again after 6 months. The biggest drawback, in my opinion, of this trial is that it only had 15 women, and that's not a lot. However, we're not done yet. Let's take a look at this next trial, which is larger. It involves 60 women with self-perceived thinning hair who used Viviscal Extra Strength or a placebo for 3 months. 90 days later, the Viviscal group had a significant increase in terminal hairs. Again, those are the thicker hairs on the head. The terminal hairs increased from 178 to 235 by the end of the study, and this was significantly better than the placebo, which really didn't see any improvements at all. Let's now take a look at some before and after pictures. On the left is how a woman appeared at the start of the study, and on the right is that same woman 3 months later. And here's the before and after pictures of another woman in the study. Personally, I think I see some changes in hair growth, but what do you think? So I like that this study contained a larger number of women, and I also like that it had a placebo group too. And I also want to point out that this study does not prove that Viviscal helps all kinds of hair loss in women, including hair loss that may be caused by medical conditions like hypothyroidism. And that brings us to something that when the research came out, it became something of a social media frenzy I'm talking pumpkin seed oil. Let's zero in on the study that gets the most attention. And here it is. It involved 60 women with female pattern hair loss, and the pumpkin seed was actually compared to 5% minoxidil. Something else to be aware of is that the women didn't consume pumpkin seed oil as a supplement. Rather, they used it on their scalp. Specifically, they used 1 milliliter of pumpkin seed oil on their scalp daily for 3 months. On the left is a woman before she started using pumpkin seed oil, and on the right is how she looked 3 months later. And just for comparison, here's one of the women in this study who used 5% minoxidil. And I really want to make this easier for you to see the differences between them. So here are both pictures side by side. On the top is the woman who was using the pumpkin seed oil, and below her is a woman who used minoxidil. Now, if you ask me, I think minoxidil wins this battle, but you tell me in the comments below what you think. There's also this interesting study on pumpkin seed oil showing it works, but the drawback here is that it only involved men, and that's important because this study doesn't prove that pumpkin seed oil works the same way in women. Now let's talk about an ingredient that most people have probably never heard of, but I'll bet it's in your hair growth supplements right now. I'm talking tocotrienols. And if you're not familiar with tocotrienols, it's just another form of vitamin E. And that's an important point to bring up because most people think that vitamin E is just one thing. Rather, it's actually a family of compounds that is mostly made up of tocotrienols and tocopherols. Okay. So what's the proof? This is the study that most people will point to. 38 people are given 100 milligrams of tocotrienols or a placebo daily for 8 months. Specifically, the people took 50 milligrams of tocotrienols 2 times a day after meals. And I'd also mention that this was a mixed tocopherol supplement made up of alpha, gamma, and delta tocotrienols. Results. The average number of hairs in those people taking tocotrienol supplements increased over 34%. This sounds fantastic, but I'm not a fan of this study, and here's why. Number one, this is the only clinical trial of tocotrienols and hair loss that I was able to locate. Number two, this study contains no before and after pictures, despite the fact that it lasted 8 months. And number three, and this is worth pointing out, of the 38 people in this clinical trial, only 2 of them were women. To me, that says this study cannot definitively prove that tocotrienol vitamin E supplements improve hair growth in women. Next up is a class of hair growth supplements that I really had to include in this video because I would bet you probably have them in your home right now. I'm talking about hair growth gummies. So, do hair growth gummies really work? The strongest study that I found is this clinical trial involving 65 healthy women with thinning hair. They used a hair growth gummy daily for 6 months, and compared to the women who took a placebo, the hair growth gummy group saw about a 10% improvement in hair density. And that's compared to placebo takers who actually saw a reduction in hair density. Pretty impressive, but all the results were not positive. For example, the hair growth gummies failed at improving the strength of the hair compared to placebo takers. So hair growth gummies are definitely popular, but understand that they are simply delivery mechanisms for vitamins, minerals, and other ingredients. Most of the hair growth gummies that I have seen tend to look rather similar to each other. And to drive that message home, here are the supplement facts labels of several hair growth gummies side by side. Notice they all have some added sugars, along with various vitamins and minerals. Generally, nothing too unique here. Also, take notice that hair gummies tend to have a lot of biotin, which begs the question, does biotin grow hair? Here is a review of biotin supplements for hair loss. These authors found only 18 reported cases where biotin seemed to help hair and nails, but here's the thing, in all of those 18 cases, the people had some underlying medical problem that was interfering with their hair or nail growth. I also want to call your attention to this review of 3 clinical trials where the researchers state, quote, given the widespread popularity of biotin as a hair supplement, one would presume that this claim must be grounded in strong evidence. However, there is a large discrepancy between the public's perception of its efficacy and scientific literature. The use of biotin as a hair supplement is not supported by high quality studies. In other words, despite biotin's popularity, the actual proof that it works is pretty thin. It's also worth noting that if you are taking supplements that contain biotin, especially 5 milligrams or greater, you really should talk to your doctor before having blood work. And that's because biotin can interfere with a surprising number of blood test results, including tests for hypothyroidism, iron levels, estrogen, testosterone, and even some heart health tests, among others. Now let's cover some vitamins and minerals that you may not be thinking about. In this review of nutrients and hair loss, the researchers point to the evidence for several supplements. However, for most of these nutrients, really good, strong clinical research appears to be lacking. That said, if I were to put my money on some things, it would be for alopecia areata, vitamin D, especially if you were deficient, for telogen effluvum, maybe iron, but only if you are deficient in iron. Please definitely make sure you're deficient before taking iron supplements, because too much iron is not healthy. And also take notice in this table that too much of some nutrients may actually cause hair loss. Okay, so if you've seen my videos before, you know I like tables. So here is my big picture table of all the supplements that I just presented. Not all supplements are backed by the same level of proof. Nutrafol and Viviscal, for example, come out near the top, and one of the reasons for that is their companies actually invest in clinical trials. Iron supplements may also help, but again, only if you're deficient and your doctor can do a blood test to tell you if that's true or not. Vitamin D and pumpkin seed oil, yeah, they look promising, but they're not exactly what I would call home runs. If this video helped you, give me a thumbs up, and if you want to support my independent research just like this, buy me a coffee. The link is below, and I'll see you in the next video.